welcome back. And as was mentioned earlier in the show, our first segment for today is a conversation with representatives of the University of West Indies as they tell us about the upcoming Belize Country Conference, and it's being held under the theme Leadership for Sustainability. We have with us the head of the UWI Open Campus, Belize, Jane Bennett, and we have one of the presenters who will be a part of the conference, Carolyn Sandiford. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. Yep, that's right. Good morning. You know, whenever it comes to UWI, it's always something that would impact the country in a positive way. When it comes to conferences, when it comes to somebody coming in to give a speech, when it comes to just dealing with education education on a whole, there is always something wonderful for this country coming out of UWI. So we've got this country conference that will be coming up. When is it? What is it going to be about? Expand on it for us. Good morning once again.
Good morning. Thank you, Marlene and John and Carolyn for accompanying me this morning.
You're welcome.
And yes, John, well put. You must work at UE. But thank you for that opener. Yes, indeed. The mandate of the University of the West Indies is indeed to let me put it in the right context, to contribute to the human development of the region, and in doing so, they do try to participate around the region in anything that's topical within its territories, no? Mm-hmm. And so yes, we try to bring in the experts to join the dialogue that's going on in a particular country whenever that's possible, right?
Yeah.
And in so doing, one of the mandates for our centers, or sites as we're called these days, is to put off these country conferences every 2 years. And so it's time for Belize to do it once again. And so this year we decided to go with, as Carolyn had said before we got on here, some of these thematic, trendy things that's going on in the global village that we live. And so leadership for sustainability is one of those. Mm-hmm. And so under the direction of our principal, Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Open Campus, Dr. Luz Longsworth, who's known to the entire nation of Belize. So we had a conversation earlier this year, and she said, how about Belize doing, its conference on leadership for sustainability? And when the head honcho says, let's do it, well, Jane says yes, right? And so here we are. And so, yeah, in collaboration with our Cave Hill School of Business, we are going to be hosting this on the 9th and 10th of November at our site on Princess Margaret Drive. And we expect lots of people to participate. As participants, not as a presenter like Carolyn.
And we have quite a number of presenters and panelists who are going to be there. Before we move into that, though, let's just try to break down this theme itself. Mm-hmm. What is leadership for sustainability? What would you say the focus would be?
Okay. I think if you look at it in a general sense, right? Mm-hmm. Those of us in leadership positions around the world, we have a responsibility to make sure that our leadership is modeling and driven towards sustainability, because it's always about what is the footprint you're leaving for those behind you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And so in a nutshell, that's what it means. Now, when you break it down, as Marlene said, what we try to do when we looked at the literature is to pick up what we thought was relevant to our context here in Belize. And so, for example, Carolyn zeroed in on the poverty reduction and whatever. She'll talk more about that. We looked at educating leaders, educating the leaders we have and we want for sustainability. We looked at promoting diversity, leadership and activism, cross-cultural blended learning, risk reduction and stability by mastering sustainability change management. So we really try to bring it down. Energy resilience, one of the most trendy ones these days and very important, climate change. Organizational and decision-making agility, and so on and so on and so forth. Tapping grassroots change leadership potential. So we looked at the spectrum, and we just extracted what we thought we could bring together to have an impact for this conference.
Of course, I asked that question because I told you during the break that I had been hearing it was a climate change conference. And I think because we're so accustomed, we joked about thematic areas, we're so accustomed to hearing sustainability linked with climate change. Perhaps that was the first thought that people had. But leadership for sustainability, if I were to reflect on the theme itself, is really encouraging people who are in decision-making positions to make decisions that are more long-term, rather than looking at the short-sighted results, which many can say is what we do here in Belize primarily. How do you put together a panel to be able to, or how do you make the decision to whittle down the panel, I should say, into those who will provide the most insight into this topic?
Well, let's start with the first panel, where there are people around the globe, as you know, who've had interest in Belize. They've been coming here for different developmental and educational support and so on. So there's a few people that Dr. Longsworth knew who wanted to be a part of something going on in Belize. So they volunteered. So on our international panel, we have two folks from Norway who've been working around with others in Belize. So they're coming, and they narrowed it down to climate change. And I think maybe that's why the word is out there. Also, because the previous conference we had here in Belize was a climate change conference. So there's just, and as Marlene said, you say sustainability. For some reason, even though we have things like food and safety and other things, but for some reason everybody goes towards climate change, which is a good thing, but it's not totally the whole picture. And so I think that's where that came from. So in addition to our friends from abroad, we have our local lineup as well. We have, for example, Ambassador Gutierrez, who I think he's also friends with the people from abroad. We have Kay Menzies bringing a business perspective to the panel. We have representatives from our indigenous groups, a Mayan person, a Garifuna from their community. And we also have, I'm missing somebody in there, and they're going to kill me.
CEO Ramkan. CEO.
That's another panel or presentation. But there's somebody else I'm missing. Forgive me, whoever you are. I don't want to be rustling the papers, but we try to bring balance that kind of blend to have an international flavor. So we're looking at both perspectives, right? And they tied it under, as I said before, climate change. So there will be a climate change aspect of the conference, but not in totalment. There's an education aspect. There's another aspect that Carolyn will speak to. And so there's a grassroots aspect as well. One of our presenters is bringing that to the forefront. So we're going to really mix it up and try to look at as many aspects of our sustainability agenda, if you will, as we can. So I think it's really going to be a rich conference.
I noticed that it's well-rounded. It's there's a part in there for everybody. That's one of the things we want to say kudos on, because then again, when it comes to UWI, it's actually bringing it. Who is to be a part of it? Is there anybody specific we're targeting here, or do we say, you know what, you're welcome to come on out and listen to these presentations so as to learn something from it?
John, to answer your question, again, I try to, when we envisioned, what did we want to achieve, but I thought it important to put on our list of presenters and panelists people who are already in leadership positions, because I think that kind of exposure and support to say, this is how we're doing it now, is as important as getting people who are not at the helm, if you will, to also balance it out. So we're hoping that there's an awareness now among the presenters that, okay, how have I been doing this that I'm doing to make it sustainable for, as Marlene rightfully said, going forward. So when I leave this position, what am I leaving to be carried forward? So we looked at it from that aspect, and also then for other people who we knew were not necessarily at the helm but have been contributing in whatever they're doing, whether it's agriculture, whether it's water, because we have two presenters in those areas as well, energy, what have they been doing that will also contribute to this conversation. So that's pretty much how we did it.
Okay.
So let's bring Carolyn into the conversation. And Carolyn, let me just ask first off, before we get into your topic, What prompted you to want to be involved with the conference?
A couple things, professionally, individually, and of course I'm a Belizean at heart. So everything that can have the kind of discussions and dialogue that can contribute and inform decision making for me, I welcome and I embrace. But professionally, I am a member of several organizations, one locally because I'm the president and executive director of the Alleviation of Planners, and our function or our mandate is to champion inclusive and sustainable communities, resilient communities, see how the term comes out. But I'm also a member of Caribbean 2030, which is leadership for the next generation, new kind of thinking. And that team meets, we've met since 3 times, first in the UK. And that team comprises of academic, people from political parties, people from government. In fact, the current Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holmes, is a member of our team. And so what we've been doing within Caribbean 2030 is to start look at what is the Caribbean society that we want by 2030. And so we represent countries, islands throughout the Caribbean doing that sort of thing. Bringing it home now as a member of the Belize Association of Planners, we had a recent conference which we sat right at on this couch talking about building urban resilience to climate change. And so when the issue of the conference came up, and I looked at it from 2 angles, leadership and sustainability for what it was, but bringing it together. And you spoke earlier about what happens next for the next generation. We need to start thinking of the benefits of the decisions that we make today and how we can sustain those benefits over time. So my conversation at the conference will be looking at 2 key topics that are the thematic areas: poverty and climate change, but within the context of an urbanizing Belize, and to share insights and explore that nexus to show how Belize is urbanizing, but it is urbanizing with certain pre-existing conditions, issues of poverty, lack of housing, poor infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And then you have the emerging, which is the climate change issues that are coming on, which can intensify the conditions that we are now living in, and certainly to be disproportionate to those vulnerable populations. But we can use this as an opportunity to do 2 things: address climate change issues while addressing those urban development challenges that we have. And that is how I want to frame that conversation for this conference.
Can I tell you, we did the backdrop for your presentation earlier this week with a conversation about climate change as Mr. Fuller from the 5 Cs prepared to go to COP22. Part of that conversation was looking specifically at that, the urbanization that takes place. If we look within Belize City alone, one of the areas we could reflect on was the issue that happened with the Crewman Lagoon.
Exactly.
And where oftentimes the desperate needs of persons today doesn't necessarily allow us to be able to think long-term and what the implications will be, both for them and for the wider society. From your perspective, and I don't know if you have it as a part of your presentation, poverty alleviation is extremely important. You know, we're looking at nearly half of our population being considered poor. And oftentimes, if we look at just the hierarchy of needs and how we function, you want to be able to give people what they need before you can move into the macro level and look at the long-term vision. How does one as a leader balance those? How do you tell somebody, well, I'll give you housing, but you'll have to be 15 miles out of town, which means you have a travel expense, and still be able to I suppose, be able to plan properly for a municipality or a town or a country?
I think it speaks again to leadership, and perhaps why conferences like these are important. Because as you quite pointed out earlier, there's a role for everyone. And this is why we have leaders. As planners, we continue to argue and say if we plan for our communities, we can plan for the changes that our communities go through. How do we balance? We need to start having conversations with people about what are the issues that are challenging our society and our communities, and what are some of the possible solutions. You spoke, for example, about living 15 miles out of town. But let us start at looking, and if we want to put it in Belize City context, let us start looking at the statistics and the data for Belize City. There's a significant percentage of our properties that are vacant and underdeveloped. I think in some areas it's 40, 50, 60%. Some of these areas already have electricity, water, and so on and so forth. And so as planners, we would say we need to capture the opportunities of urbanization. One such opportunity is to make our communities more efficient. That may mean changing the way we think about how we build. Many persons or many communities or many families, for example, traditionally speaks to the one lot, one house. Yes? But if you look at our statistics and the statistical data coming out of the recent housing and population statistics, you're going to see that there's a shift move now from the single family to the multifamily. And if you just walk around Belize City, you're going to see apartment buildings coming up. And so this makes accessibility to infrastructure, to opportunities for jobs which are within the urban area, far easier than saying to someone, you need to go in a community 15 miles away. Now, having said that, we also, as within Belize City, have to deal with the issues of migration coming out of the rural areas. So we cannot speak solely about what we do in Belize City. We have to speak about what we do in the country, because a lot of the urbanization that is taking place in Belize is not taking place in Belize City, nor the district towns. It is taking place in what we call the intermediate settlements: Ladyville, Lords Bank, Hattieville, Trial Farm, Bella Vista, Independence, and so on. So if we start organize these settlements in such a way that people move into settlements and make our land use and manage our resources more efficiently, then you can start providing those things for people, the housing, the infrastructure. And it is by providing access to resources and services, people are lifted out of poverty. People move into urban areas for a reason, and there are many reasons why they move in. And we also have to look at the changing in land ownership. If you look to the north, for example, the coming in of SR and the ownership of large tracts of land, which is now pushing cane farmers into urban communities. And that's happening also in Kaya district, which is one of the fastest districts. People are actually moving into the villages, and it is those villages that are growing. So we have to start looking at a couple of things. We have to start looking at legislation, for example. And how is it that decisions for the country are still being made in Belmopan as against within those communities and those municipalities? We have to start looking, as you said, balancing the issue of climate change and urban development challenges. If we will be addressing issues of climate change, which is requiring us to build, to use more sustainable technology, to use more sustainable use of infrastructure and so on and so forth, that then speaks to a shift in the way we build, in the way we develop, and so on and so forth. So it's having to respond directly, Marlene and John, it's having the conversations with people. I think oftentimes we don't want to have those conversations because we say, oh, well, they have their everyday issues to do it. And yes, they do. But if you can link their everyday issues to what is happening, then it will open their minds and open their eyes.
You know, you've said, you actually open a lot of people's eyes on exactly what's going on in terms of how urban the rural areas are getting. Are people taking heed of what you're saying? And as a presenter, how do you captivate them? Because this is extremely important.
I think, as you quite rightly said, it is important. And I think this is where Jane and I have joined forces on many issues. Because, for example, we're having the conversation on agroecology and urban forestry. Because, as you quite rightly pointed out, everything happens at different levels and with different players. But how do you captivate an audience? The data, the imagery. Because we also have to have what I call what the communication means. If you present papers that are just lots of data, lots of statistics, it may take somebody to another realm. But if you show the imagery, and I think from the Belize Association of Planners, what we have been trying to do is to have those kinds of conversations and use every opportunity. I was pleased to hear Barlene say Carlos Fuller is talking urbanization, because Carlos Fuller has been, of course, an authority on issues of climate change. And we have been having these same kind of conversation, and the National Climate Change Office, I must say, the Ministry of Sustainable Development, they have been encouraging and embracing us and the thoughts that we share because we do participate in their meetings and so on to say, you need to change the conversation from just talking CO2. People, emission and CO2 credits, and that nobody want to hear that. What people want to hear is, how is it that it's going to affect me?
If and why I should build a bungalow
exactly, vis-a-vis an upper flat. Recently, Hurricane Earl that swept through Vista del Mar, people were totally unprepared for when that storm surge came in. But there's a reason why that storm surge came in. Vista del Mar sits on the coast, and most of the construction took place at the ground level. And it is those images and those incidences that you use and bring back to people to say, this is what will happen. And if we do this today, it compromises our long-term development.
I think you mentioned one point that I wanted to tap into, because I think it is absolutely important when we talk about being able to be effective leaders. Communication skills are completely understated at times in terms of the capacity of a leader. Oftentimes where the technical knowledge is present, and the proper justification for decisions that perhaps are more sustainable, more geared towards sustainable development is there. The capacity to be able to communicate them effectively to those who will be impacted is lost. And that's where we see. And we can, and in Belize, we do have a very reactive society. So if we don't understand why it's happening and we start calling in on the talk shows, things are eventually slowed down or stopped or halted completely. Is that going to be a part of the conversation in this conference?
Well, I hope all of the other presenters are listening to Carolyn, is what I will say. No, because she hit on it, you hit on it as an educator, as a human being. We need to really understand that a lot of the issues we have begin with and end with communication. And talking to an audience who doesn't understand in technical terms, you may as well don't talk. If you want people to know what's the with him, as we say, what's in it for me, then you have to link the information you're sharing with what is their reality.
Yes.
If you want them to understand that, you know, this will affect you, then tell me how it affect me in a terms I could understand. What the emission? What the CO2? I mean, speak a language that people will understand, and not only speak the language, speak it where it matters, when it matters, is very important as well.
Is it though? And yeah, I think the presenters have to be able to break down the information in that way. But and maybe you can share your own personal experiences. It could be, and we see it on this show as well, oftentimes people think of the technical persons who are listening, if they're judging capacity as to whether you know what you're talking about, rather than your actual target audience. And it is so important. What do you call it? Whiffism?
With him.
That is so fantastic.
That's a lovely one.
And it's been around for a long time.
We have to understand who we're talking to. We have to understand who will be impacted, and they have to understand why these decisions are made. In terms of your own experience, in your own leadership capacities, how have you found the response in terms of being able to sometimes just get down and break it down into what it means for the individuals you're talking about? And when you're talking about urbanization or planning especially, we had the zoning conversation come up with Belize City Council. That was, so I think it is most important. Tell me about your personal experience when it comes to that.
I think one has to have that quality of fluidity. Someone once said to move from the boardroom to the streets and back to the boardroom. But I think it is that, and it is also about self-reflection. I know as planners, and I can speak from the planning perspective, we had to also sit back and reflect and say, are we going to be the persons or the professions that simply continue to talk, prepare plans that go on shelves, right? Or start reflecting and ask ourselves, really, what is our value and what is our legitimacy? And by bringing value and legitimacy, it comes right back to people and how you connect with people. And so we, for example, shifted the way we started to think, the way we started to act, and started to look at our profession directly in how it connects to people. And perhaps that is why we now have what you call the new urban agenda, because it is about how we link our work to improving the quality of life of people, how we link to our work to be having our communities more inclusive, how we link our work to making our communities more resilient to address issues like crime and violence. If I ask somebody simply talk planning, it may not bother anybody, but if I start talking about how planning can address issues of crime and violence and reduce crime and violence and contribute to your safety and security, Belize has a high crime rate. You know, and so that you then start making that connection with people.
Yeah. After listening to you, Mrs. Sandiford, as one of the presenters, you know, it brings a sense of clarity of exactly what we need to learn, where we've been, what we need to learn, and how we go forward. Now, I would want to be a part of this conference. So, how do I go? What do I do? When do we have these conferences going on?
John, let me just piggyback on one thing first, because it's so important what Carolyn said and Marlene asked. You see, whatever you do in life, wherever you may be, whether in your private life or professional, you have to understand again how important communication is. And not only that you're communicating, as I said before, but how. And first of all, what is your purpose of communicating? I think if we keep the prize in mind, at UA, our prize is people. Wherever you are, again, it's always the people aspect that we take out of the equation that we have to put back into the equation. But to answer your question, please do come. The conference again is on November 9th and 10th at UA on Princess Margaret Drive. There is a fee. There is a fee. It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning and finishes more or less at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on both days. There's an opening ceremony. You don't want to miss that. So come early. Be there at 8:30. We start at 9. And then it's followed by the international panel. And then in the afternoon, we start with some concurrent sessions, which means sessions happening at the same time, right? I'm walking my talk here, be very specific. And then we have individual presenters as well on both days.
And all this falls into UWI Education Week 2016.
Yes, thank you for making that linkage. So this is, I think, our 6th year, John and Marlene and Carolyn, where we set aside 1 week to showcase what UA does. And we start with a church service on the Sunday of that week. And we have been rotating among the denominations. So this year, we're going to Sand Hill to, I think it's a Zion church. They don't have it in front of me.
It's a Zion Methodist Protestant church.
And so we start with a church service. We go into communities and we talk about UA and how wonderful we are and all the good things we've been doing in Belize since 1948 when UA was actually established. That's how long UA has been in this country. And a lot of people still don't know that. And every time I go on talk shows, I say, when UA was created, it came to Belize under the umbrella of the extramural department. And it evolved into the School of Continuing Studies and then into the open campus. Now, what that means is that people all over the world can now go online. As long as you have a laptop and the internet, you can be a UA student. You could be at the beach.
Or
just make sure you have connectivity. And then you can take a program. It was really designed as well for the working professional. So you can balance your work, life, study, and so on and so forth. But you can also come for face-to-face. Some people say, me can't learn outside of the classroom. And so to complement that, we do the competency skills kind of thing, continuing and professional education, and Carolyn is one of our facilitators as well. For example, if you want to take project management, which is another of these buzz trendy things, but it's very global. So people who have that kind of aspiration or profession, project management is one of the ways to go. Carolyn is one of our facilitators for that. So you can do a face-to-face, time management, stress management. We have a whole suite, and so I invite you, come. and so we start with that. In the afternoon, I just thought, you know what, we don't just do academics, we do all kind of things. So I linked up with the cycling now called Federation in Belize. They're very, very supportive. And so in the afternoon of Sunday, we were going to Marine Parade for a day of fun. We have children with their tricycles, then bicycles, beach bike, whatever, and our professional cyclists performing. They do what they call a criterion. This year we're moving it to Chetamal Street. So I repeat, we're not at Marine Parade. This year we're going to be at Chetamal Street. So we do that from 1 until 6 on Sunday, and it's this Sunday.
And that's people of all ages.
All ages, sizes, colors, differently able. Everybody
training
come on
wheels
out.
or no training
And all,
wheels?
everybody. Because what we were trying to establish with the Federation is to keep the awareness and to pass on the baton so that young people see more of the sports. They can actually see their favorite professional person up front. And it's really, really good fun. And then one of my staff members runs the lime and the spoon and sack race. It's really a fun day. So come on out, everyone, please.
Okay.
On Monday, we go to the premises for an open day, and we invite schools to come out all day long, and we talk about the different programs that we offer. Okay? So, and the public is invited as well, but we wanted to target the schools.
Right.
On Tuesday, my staff does community work, and we like going over to the Lake High Baptist Church, and then we help to feed the children from St. Luke Primary School. And we do the dishes afterwards as well. and I always tell my female staff, let the guys do it. No, we all do it together.
Right.
We all do it together. And then on Tuesday evening, we have what we call a recognition ceremony. What we do is we celebrate our Belizean UWI students who did not have an opportunity to go to their respective campuses for mostly financial reasons. And so we give them an opportunity to walk into the auditorium, put on a gown afterwards, and take pictures with their family members, spouses, and so we do that. We do that every year. We do that every year. And joining us again this year, and they do it as often as they can, the Cave Hill School of Business, we have Belizeans who have completed their executive MBA and international MBA, and we do the same thing. We give them that opportunity. They're UWI. Yeah. So we do that as well. And then, so that's on Tuesday. On Wednesday and Thursday is the conference that we're promoting today. And then on Friday, our student association, we call them guild because we're very British, you know. So we call them student guild, and our alumni, they get together and they have a mixer just to socialize. And this year, for the first time on Saturday, we're going to culminate with the Panyard in Belmopan.
In Belmopan?
Belmopan.
You know, I found out about this because Belmopan said, you know, if you miss the Panyard in September, it's coming here.
And so we expect everybody to come. But we do know that we're leading up to Garifuna Day. And so a lot of people will be heading south for the Battle of the Bands, right? Of the drummers, yes. We're still trying to hope maybe one or two drummers who could not make it to go down to be part of our lineup for the Panyard. Because Panyard is featuring 5 bands, but we're also having other entertainers. There'll be a DJ, you know, to fill the gap there. But we also have, hopefully, the senior steppers from Belmopan. There's a marimba band as well. So we're trying to, we like mix up, you know, we mix up.
Which is great.
Yes, so we try to pull it all together. So we're really looking forward to everybody going to the Hilltop basketball court in Belmopan on Saturday at 6 o'clock.
There are several activities that people can join in. One is the day of races. The other is checking out the open day that you'll be having. And then you have the country conference. As you pointed out, there is a fee. There's a student rate and an adult. It's student is $75 US. Is that what I'm seeing here?
I don't have the papers.
Okay, so yes, so there is a fee associated with the country conference, but it is 2 days, and you are able to get access to all the presentations of your choice.
And let me just add, there is a group rate. So if you bring 3 colleagues, 3 family members, 3 and above, you get a group rate. And please do call our office, 223-0484 for additional information.
All right, and then the Panyard is in Belmopan, 6 p.m. at the Hilltop Basketball Court.
On November 12th.
On November 12th.
Next Saturday.
Fantastic. So you have quite a number of activities lined up. I hope that people take advantage of attending the country conference. It sounds like you have a great lineup of panelists there. You also have a keynote speaker that is coming in.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I was looking at your screen, and unfortunately the first keynote who had been identified by the Cave Hill School of Business, he had an accident, will not be able to come. So we're bringing in a UWI expert. John had mentioned earlier that we try to bring people in. So Professor Dale Weber, who has been in Belize as well, I think he was doing some work previously with UB on our Calabash Key. And so he's no stranger to Belize. He was overjoyed when we asked him to come. And so he will be here instead.
All right.
So we'll be updating that fact sheet shortly.
And Carolyn, thank you for coming in. We know we only got a preview of what your presentation will be, but it definitely is enough for people to know that there's a wealth of information they'll be able to receive if they attend the conference. Thank you all.
Not if, when they attend.
When they attend.
So thank you very much again, Marlene and John.
For having us.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break now. When we come back, we'll be joined by a lecturer and social worker from Oliveira to talk about some research that he's done on child sexual abuse. So stay tuned.